Okay, we're going to continue talking here about the social effects of media. And the first thing we're going to talk about now is media violence. There are more than 1,000 studies, and probably a good deal more than that now. I haven't updated this for a while, that have been conducted on the effect of violence in the media. And of course, we're mainly concerned with the effect of that on children. There's a good deal of consensus on this that children can be influenced in a bad way to be more aggressive, and that is not to say that this is the only cause of such things, but that children who are exposed to a lot of media violence will tend to be more aggressive than other children, more inclined to be violent. This is an article from a few years ago. The vast majority of parents, pediatricians, and media researchers all believe that violent movies, video games, and television shows can lead to increased aggression in children. And this is according to a study published in the journal Psychology of Popular Media Culture. In the past, there was perception that the field was divided about whether children's behavior could be affected by violent content. This study dispels that notion by showing that, in fact, there is broad consensus, there's general agreement that violent content can lead to more aggression, and this is agreement between parents, pediatricians, doctors who treat children, and media researchers. So, as it says, the next note says, the majority of studies say children who watch a lot of TV violence tend to be more aggressive themselves. Now, notice that phrase, tend to be, is underlined, which means that if you say, well, I have a cousin and he watches a lot of violent TV or plays a lot of violent video games, and he's not aggressive at all, he's not violent at all. It's not to say that the effect is the same on everyone, that everyone is affected to the same degree. It's a question of as the phrase says, tend to be. So that's the argument. Let's have a look at a video on this subject.
Mount.
He's wired, he's got a bomb.
Sorry, there's no bomb. What, those two?
It's in video games, movies, music, cartoons, the nightly news, on the web, and even in television commercials. Violence is literally everywhere in our media today, and it's becoming harder to avoid in our society. Today, with the explosion of technology and the 24/7 media access that comes along with it, the question more than ever is, what's the actual impact, especially on our kids?
There will be more droids.
The short answer is, we know it's a real issue for our kids and teens, but we don't know the exact impact. Research on the amount and impact of violence in media is woefully out of date and incomplete. What we do know from the existing research is that media violence is pervasive. Past studies estimate that about 90% of movies, 68% of video games, 60% of TV shows, and 15% of all music videos include some depictions of violence. And kids are exposed to a whole lot of it. In fact, a recent study found that kids as young as 8 are spending nearly 7.5 hours per day with media, and it's sure more time than they spend with their families or in school. While experts agree that no one single factor can cause a nonviolent person to act aggressively, heavy exposure to violent media can definitely be a risk factor for violent behavior. Children who are exposed to multiple risk factors, including aggression and conflict at home, are the most likely to behave aggressively.
So I'm going to pause that there, and you can watch the rest of it on your own if you would like to. It's only about 3 minutes. So they talk about risk factors there. So he's saying that media violence, exposure to a lot, of media violence can be one risk factor, but there are other risk factors. So no one's arguing that this is the only cause, or that every child who sees X amount of violence is going to turn out to be violent himself or herself, but that it is a significant factor. That's the argument. There's another issue of desensitization, and this is when violence or aggression is viewed repeatedly in the media and normalized, or we begin to see it as something that's ordinary, that's just a normal, everyday part of life, and therefore not anything to be concerned about or to be troubled by. So I have an interesting video here that relates this to the Hunger Games, which probably you have seen one or more of those movies, but you may not have thought that the Hunger Games is actually on one level making somewhat of a statement about this issue of desensitization.
Hey guys, so you're trying to decide where to get your seeds. I'm telling you right now, True Leaf is the way to go. These guys are...
The Hunger Games is a fictional story about a murderous reality TV show, but could it have anything to do with our reality TV, you know, in the real world? Hey everyone, Lacey Green here for D News. Guys, The Hunger Game is coming out this Friday and I am so excited! If you're not familiar, The Hunger Games is a book and movie series about a reality TV show where the ruling elite force children from the underclass to duke it out till death, all while cameras televise the event across the country of Panem. In an interview with Scholastic, the author has talked about reality TV and how she's very disturbed by the voyeuristic thrill that people get when they watch others being humiliated, brought to tears, or suffering physically on TV. This aspect of the Hunger Games is meant to raise questions about the desensitization and even pleasure that occurs when we see people treating each other poorly. Now today I want to take a look at reality TV shows because I was curious, what effect do reality TV shows have on us, if any? A study in the Journal of Broadcast and Electronic Media found that reality TV as a genre has 2 times the rate of aggressive acts as comedies and dramas, with some shows having up to 90 aggressive acts per hour. The aggression is not only these physical outbursts, but name-calling, gossip, humiliation, bullying, the whole bit. In 2011, the Girl Scout Research Institute's Real to Me study found that teenagers who regularly watch reality TV accept and expect higher levels of drama, aggression, and bullying in their lives. Viewers were considerably more likely to agree that gossip is a normal part of relationships between girls and that they can't trust each other. Reality TV viewers were also more likely to agree that lying and being mean to get what you want were necessary for success, and that physical appearance is very important. The findings suggest that there's some kind of mimicry happening. Researchers have found that mimicry is more pronounced with shows that claim to be real than those with fictional characters.
Okay, so we'll pause it there, and again, this goes on for another minute or so, but we'll stop it at that point. So we get into the area of reality TV, and not just violence in the literal sense of causing physical harm to another person, but aggressive behavior in terms of personal relationships, bullying, and so on, and the influence that reality television may have there. So again, the question is, and the issue is here as we talk about social effects, is what is the effect of media on kids, but not just kids, but in particular children who have prolonged, extended exposure to media. Video games, certainly there has been concern over the long-term effect of heavy video game use, and let's have a look at a video here on video games.
This life-saving device stops a person from choking in seconds.
In our morning rounds, video games and your kids, 97% of teenagers and preteens say they play them. About a third admit at least one of their favorite favorites is rated mature or adults only, often because of the violent content. Well, a new study finds a link between violent games and aggressive behavior in children. Dr. Harold Koplowitz is a child psychiatrist and president of the Child Mind Institute and joins us at the table. Hello, Harold Koplowitz.
Good morning.
Seems like we have been hearing about this information for years, that there's a correlation. What makes this study different and so important to you?
I think it's a very good study in the respect it's a large sample. There are over 3,000 kids who were interviewed for the study over 2 years, and they were interviewed 3 times about how often they play games, what kind of games they're playing, and what kind of effect it has on them. It has one limitation that we should note is that they only are relying on self-report. That means the kids are giving us the information. We're not getting information from teachers or from parents. But the kids are telling us that the longer they play and the more they play aggressive games, they start thinking in an aggressive way and they have more aggressive attitudes. That's not necessarily a link to violence, but that does tell us that the exposure, particularly for young kids, does have a negative effect in the way they think.
Okay, we'll pause that there, and again, it goes on for a bit longer if you want to watch the rest of that on your own. So that was a self-study in which kids that play a lot of video games were surveyed about what they see as the effect of the video games, and they themselves said, yeah, the more I play, the more I tend to have sort of an aggressive attitude. So interesting. Virtual reality is not coming, it's here. It's a question of how much more so it will become part of just everyday, ordinary entertainment. And interesting question of will we come to prefer video or virtual reality to real life? That has some implications. A couple of videos here I want to show you. And again, will it affect our perception of reality?
Live TV from 85 plus channels with local sports and news. YouTube TV. Try it free.
Facebook's Oculus and Google's Cardboard are generating huge excitement about the entertainment and educational potential of virtual reality. Jeremy Bailenson sees potential that's even more exciting and uncertain. His Stanford University lab is studying what effects virtual reality has in the real world for adults and children.
So it turns out if you take a elementary school child and you bring him or her to the lab and you give them a virtual experience, a week later, when you bring those same kids back, 50% of them will believe that that virtual experience happened in the physical world.
The lab has partnered with Sesame Street to study the implications of that.
So what we're doing, Sesame Street, is first of all, we're just exploring what type of content would be engaging for kids. But more importantly, we're trying to see, well, what's going to happen to a 5-year-old in general when she puts on the helmet? I mean, is this okay for the perceptual system of a 5-year-old?
I'm going to pause that there, and this very cute little girl is interviewed in the remainder of the video, but I think you get the idea there. And the interesting thing of what he said, the most interesting thing to me is that children at 5 who participate in this experiment a week later tend to think that what they saw in virtual reality actually did happen. That it was real. Now, to some extent, kids may also say that about a television show they see, but probably not to that extent. So this question of will we come to prefer virtual reality to real life is a question that is addressed in this video.
I want you to imagine this. In a not too distant future, a company makes a super high-tech virtual reality headset. You can slip it on and experience anything that you want. Everything that you experience would feel 100% lifelike, and in fact, you wouldn't be able to tell your experiences apart from real life. This machine can maximize the total amount of pleasure you would experience in life. If you think you need a little pain to have more pleasure, it can produce that for you. No matter what, this machine can maximize pleasure over your lifetime. There's also no reason to worry about anyone outside of the machine because they can plug into, or you can assume that they're being taken care of by someone else, the government for example. So don't let your worries about serving others prevent you from plugging in. Once you plug in, you won't even know that you're plugged in. You can do anything you want in that world, but the only catch is that once you plug in, you can't come out. Knowing this, Would you plug into this world? When I asked this question on Twitter, 45% of you said yes, you would plug in, and 55% said no, you would not. This question is actually a twist on an infamous thought experiment posed by the philosopher Robert Nozick in his book Anarchy, State and Utopia, titled The Experience Machine. The situation stays the exact same, except instead of plugging into virtual reality, Robert refers to it as an experience machine. Robert assumed that most people would choose not to enter this machine. I wanted to revisit this thought experiment because I feel as if the question it asks is actually becoming more and more relevant in modern society. We are seeing great advances in virtual reality, and it doesn't seem impossible that we could one day create something similar to an experience machine.
Okay, I'm going to pause that there. So, interesting experiment. If you could plug into some kind of machine, virtual reality or whatever that gives you the maximum amount of pleasure, and you were assured that by doing so that people that are important to you and your family and friends and what have you would be, quote, taken care of, would you do that? And a fairly high percentage of people said that they would, but of course they're not experiencing something that is real. As you go on further in that video, he makes the point that people could experience winning a gold medal in the Olympics, right? Running the fastest mile in Olympics history or in world history, and you would experience that, and you would receive the medal, but it really didn't happen, did it? It's not something that you really accomplished. You viewed this, and it seemed real, but in reality, you're sitting on your sofa. So, is that as good to have that experience as doing the thing in reality? And most of us, I think, would say no, it's not. But it's going to be a greater temptation as we go along. So a lot of this comes down to the old-fashioned phrase you may have heard from your parents or grandparents: all things in moderation. So we're not saying that each of these things is bad and should be avoided completely, but can you keep them in moderation and not over use any of the things that we're talking about, whether it be just regular television, video games, virtual reality, whatever it may be. Another thing that's important to understand here is this thing called the elaboration likelihood model. Now, this is considerably more complex than what I'm presenting to you here. But one part of this thing called the elaboration likelihood model relates to what we're talking about, and it is that viewers have different levels of engagement. Some people play video games and it becomes their whole life, and it is the most important thing in their lives, which may be a problem, probably is a problem. Others can set it aside when they want to, and then and not let it affect them in such a profound way. Everyone is not affected in the same way. So when we talk about the influence of media on violence and those sorts of things, again, different people have different levels of engagement. Some people can take something just purely as entertainment. Most people probably can, and not internalize it so much. Other people are more profoundly affected. So this thing of the elaboration likelihood model says that everyone is not affected in the same way, which probably corresponds to what you've seen in your own life. Okay, so we'll, for the time being at least, we'll bring this discussion of social effects in media to a close, although this will come up in all of the different things that we talk about to some extent, but this is a good way to start the course. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.